So we all know how the dollar has been weak this year, having one of the worst years ever. But it might be creating a new reversal and problems to the world, and that's what I would like to talk about today. So this is an incredible article that I stumbled upon talking about the effects of the dollar weakness and why international stocks are actually outperforming everything we see in the US. And what I like the most, I'm going to put the links on the description as well so you can follow it. But this is the chart that I really would like to show you. And it looks complicated, but it really isn't. So if we let me zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Perfect. So this here actually shows the pendulum that I always talked about on the dollar. So dollars are needed by everybody in the world, and the more scarce they are, the more difficult it is to serve current debt. This is why you see the dollar actually rising against other currencies, especially on the developed markets. And you can see on this chart, it actually compares the S&P 500 against everybody else, but the developed world in this case. So if it is above the line, the zero line, that means that the S&P is outperforming everybody else. And you can also see on the that the DXY also performs better when the S&P outperforms. That means money comes from outside of the United States into US markets, dollar gets stronger as well in the process, and the S&P outperforms everybody else. But then you also see the opposite happening when it goes negative here. That means that everybody else, so mostly these are this is an ETF on all of the developed world, like Japan, Switzerland, Germany, France. So 21 markets except the United States. So when you see this going down, that means that they are actually outperforming US stocks. And the most interesting part here, if we zoom in on this part here, so we had almost 15 years of S&P outperformance against everybody else. This is literally the dollar milkshake theory in action, the US exceptionalism, so to speak. But right now we have a reversal. We are just here. So on this very small part here that has been happening for 6 months now, right? It started when in the beginning of 2025, and all of the dynamics that we had in 2024 completely because right now we have this whole narrative of the dollar dying, but it means actually the opposite. It means that the rest of the world has it easier to serve their dollar debts because dollar is abundant, especially outside of the United States. We also discussed that into our Bitcoin intelligence report, the report 19, where we talk about the whole liquidity sandwich, how the new administration actually wants for that to happen. They want a weaker dollar. So you're going to see a lot of everything that how it relates as well to Bitcoin, of course. So it's very important for us to understand what happens to the dollar so we understand what happens to Bitcoin. And even though we have the S&P 500 at all-time highs, we also have everything else happening in the rest of the world as well. So which is absolutely amazing. So this is just the system perpetuating, the dollar system perpetuating. But we see that most of the narratives just talk about the dollar death is accelerating fast. So every time we see a DXY going down, people think it's the system actually crashing, but it's the exact opposite. When we have a reversal of that move, this is exactly when we start to see problems. We have scarce dollars. We're not able to serve our debt. So if you want to see exactly how this plays out and how you can actually act on it for your investments, and I actually put a photo here of the dollar milkshake, where it drains liquidity from the rest of the world, putting a lot of pressure into most developing and especially the developing countries as well. So you can follow this report and the links on the description below as well. So But when you see the DXY, it's important to see that we're still on a downtrend. So if you look in the short term, for sure, we are at 97. So we still have abundant liquidity. Markets are up, also outside of the US, and it's easier for everybody else to serve their debt. But if you look more into a long term scenario, then you see exactly that same dynamic playing out, because we see here that since, let's say, since 2008, where the whole after the 2007 crash, we do see a whole different kind of system, a different monetary system from now on. And since then, the macro trend is just dollar up. So this is going to be very interesting to see. I talked many times about the analogy of having a volleyball. When you try to submerge a volleyball into a pool, you need to put some pressure on it. But when you do that, so the XY coming down, that means that you need to be more leveraged, you need to take more credit, and this just increases the chances of a reversal over time. Because remember, the euro dollar system, so dollars are lent into existence. So most of the dollars. That means that there is always a huge pressure afterwards to serve that debt that already exists. That's future demand that is guaranteed, but your ability to serve that is not guaranteed. It depends on commerce. It depends on the economy actually flowing. And when we have a slowdown of the worldwide economy, this is where we see those moves up. And this is exactly the volleyball. So it goes up, then you try to push it back again with more credit. Then it goes up, then you push back again, and so on. But the macro scenario here is for DXY to keep going up as a structural monetary system. And this is the problem. So most people are actually concerned about that trend here, the short-term trend, saying, look, see, the dollar is dead, it's just going to go to 80 to 70 or whatever. This here just means that the system is perpetuating and not that it's dying. The opposite is when it really creates problems to the whole world. And you can also see on the Bitcoin price as well how when DXY is really tight. So when it was on 2022, for example, we've seen huge drops in Bitcoin. So it has some inverted correlation, but not really anymore, which is extremely interesting for Bitcoin. So we are at all-time highs. We have a lot of liquidity for sure. The XY is coming down. It helps Bitcoin, but it wasn't really always that way, because we had also very interesting price actions also in 2024, right? So it was still around 70. So it shows that Bitcoin is becoming more and more like a commodity-like kind of thing, and not really dependent on this kind of dynamic anymore. That's a US exceptionalism. So it was more correlated to the United States, but now it's just becoming more and more as a global asset that could, in my opinion, take advantage of both wings, regardless if it goes up or down. I mean, we still need to wait and see, but it's really becoming more and more subject to pressures that can happen in countries that we don't even know. Can be Iran, can be Australia, can be China, even though it's banned over there. They unban it, they ban it again. It can be South America, can be Europe. So it's really interesting how this kind of creates a counterbalance to that swing, and those swings are pretty helpful for us to understand, so that it creates the next scenario for liquidity that can translate itself to Bitcoin, and especially to the S&P 500. So very interesting times, because right now we're still not too sure if we're going to see a reversal. So for example, we're here on this very small thing here, but it could be, maybe it's a longer trend, could last a few years, but maybe it's a very short a trend that we can see, for example, here 1 year. So that reversal is where we really see some kind of problems happening. But the United States right now is on a roll in what comes to fiscal dominance, just more spending. There's still going to be a lot of liquidity coming up. So this may create a lot of moves here south, right? This is going to be interesting to see what happens. So we're going to be tracking that outperformance as one of the ways for us to understand what also happens to Bitcoin and if it's correlated or not. But liquidity is up, the move is up, and this is why any rumors of the death of the dollar and liquidity are greatly exaggerated when you see what happens to DXY. So hopefully you can use that as a tool so you understand why we do have such interesting times and the liquidity is just flowing all over the place. All right, see you in the next video.